when I was in Mayfair, we had supervisors for every department that the store encompassed, whether it be bakery, appy, seafood, meat department, grocery, front end, um, and they were a trip because they were supposedly experts in their field. Um, for the most part, they didn't run stores too often. Some did. Some had knowledge of running an entire store, but others were only promoted out of their departments into the supervisory positions. And like anything else, some were good and some were not so good. And then you had the district managers and the regional directors and so on and so forth. And I had a couple of district managers and regional directors that were pretty funny. One was Charlie, and Charlie had a unique walk about himself when he was in the wind. He was always trying to look so prim and proper and everything, and he had a hairstyle similar to Donald Trump's, which depended on which way the wind blew, depended on which way where his hair was, and he didn't have a lot of it, and he was very vain about that. And obviously, you can tell I don't really care what I look like, so I just always thought that was more the funnier because of that. And Charlie used to walk in circles when it was windy day, so that as the wind blew his hair away from his head, that he could walk in a circle and have it blow it right back on. It was pretty funny watching him walk down the sidewalk in front of the store looking like a spinning top. And then you had Vinny. Vinny was another district manager that I had, and he was the king of sarcasm. He was probably, well, not probably, he was worse than I was, sarcastic wise. And I thought I was pretty good, but I couldn't hold a candle to that guy. One day, I went to work in East Brunswick, and I get there, and Vinny always had a habit of starting real early to get there before any of the managers got into their stores, depending on who he was going to visit first. So I walk in, and I had known he was coming from the day before, and Vinny was one of those ones that always liked to know everything ahead of time. And so he was a sneak. He was a snoop. He looked around, and he tried to find things out. And I had spoken to him the day before, and he says, "I'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early at your store." And I said, "All right, I'll see you then." So I took an envelope, and I drew a picture of this on a piece of paper, a fist holding up the middle finger. And I put it in, and I wrote, "Screw you, Vinny," on the paper, and put it inside a manila envelope, taped it closed, and put on the outside of the envelope, "Attention Jack Dietrich, personal and confidential," and put it in my drawer. And I come in the next morning, and he's sitting there, and he goes, "I made coffee for you already." And I said, "Oh, that's good." And he was real pissy. And he started picking on me about this or that. I said, "I just walked in," and I said, "You're picking already." And I said, "At least let me get a chance to take my coat off and walk around before you start picking." And he just was off that day, and I knew. I said, "What'd you do? You find that envelope that was in my drawer, right?" And he looked at me, and his face turned all red because he had taken the envelope. He saw it, and he was curious, so we opened it to see what it was, and there was this little thing that said "Fuck you, Vinny" on it, with a middle finger pointing up at him. And that's the type of person he was. Now, the funny part is when I was walking through the parking lot, I had seen his car sitting out there in the parking lot, and I took the antenna off it. And that antenna just unscrews. So I unscrewed it from his car, and I brought it in, and I just set it down in my office and didn't say anything, and he didn't see it. So now we're walking the store, and he's still pissy, and he's picking on me for this and that and this and that. And we get to the grocery back room, and there's a frozen food load sitting out. And he says, "What are you going to do about that frozen food load?" I said, "Well, when you're done picking on me for everything that you're finding wrong in the store today," I said, "I'm going to go and I'm going to put it away." And he goes, "Well, it's not good to leave it sitting out." I said, "I understand that." I said, "But I cannot put that load away if I'm going to be walking the store with you and listening to you pick on all this little stuff because you're in a pissy mood." And he says, You know, it's not good to leave that frozen food load out. You know, and after about the sixth or seventh time that he said that, I said, you know what? I'm gonna put the frozen food load away now. And I went and I locked myself in the freezer. And he's going, come on, you have to come out. We have to finish our walk. And I said, no, I'm not coming out and finishing our walk. I said, I'm going to put this frozen food load away because that seems to be the most, you know, prime thing on your mind right now is to get that done. And I said, I'm not in the mood for you anymore, so I'm just going to put this load away. And I closed the door on him. So he got mad and he left. And I had his antenna. So I called him later on, and he was in Concordia, and I said to him, I said, hey, Butchie. And everybody, he called everybody Butchie, so we all called him Butchie back. I said, hey, Butchie. I said, you still mad at me? And he goes, I don't know if I'm madder at you for doing what you did or for that person that stole the antenna off my car. I said, well, that would be me too. He was so angry, he hung up the phone on me. I had to send it with the mail driver down. I wrapped it up like a rose with a red ribbon on it and tied a little bow on it and sent it on his way so he could put it back on. Because he was whining. He said, I didn't even have any music to listen to. All I would do was fuming and thinking about you ignoring me and locking yourself away in that freezer. They were funny times. Charlie one day walked into the Jackson store, and he always had a habit of walking up to the Curtis desk and checking the lottery numbers for the day before. So he's looking at the numbers and he's going, we won, we won. And somebody, I forget who was there, was saying, what do you mean we won? He says, we won, give me the phone, give me the phone. And he calls his wife up and he goes, honey, we won, we won. And she goes, what are you talking about? He says, we hit the pick six, we won. And I think the grand prize for that drawing that time was $1,800,000, which was a nice penny to win. And he goes, our numbers came out last night. He says, we won $1,800,000. And she goes, Charlie, the kids were sick. I didn't go and play the numbers yesterday. Now, he was like so distraught. Now, what are the odds of your numbers coming out? And you play them diligently all the time. And the one time that your numbers come out, your wife doesn't play them for whatever reason, or you don't play them for whatever reason. But yes, there was some interesting times.